Welcome to the Next Step Podcast with Jay.
And Brad. Wait,
I'm Brad.
I'm Jay. I'm an
All right.
act.
All right.
Oh, how many times have we said we're back?
A lot. 2-3 times. And it's funny, it's just got a question. Three different people are like, hey, when are you going to, thought you rebooted that. Those videos were sick. And then I'm like, well, life's pretty busy. Life's intense.
We're going to get into why we're back. One of the things, I don't know if I told you this, but we went to Supercross a couple weeks ago up in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So we flew up there.
I saw the photos.
And we were looking for where to park. And my daughter found a church. She's like, oh, we'll park in this church and we can take the bus up to it. So It's at the U of U. And then we parked in this church, but there's no cars in there. And then there were some fellas that pulled in an old car that looked a little sketch.
Nice.
And I'm like, my radar, we got my wife and kids, and I'm just like, what's going on? I'm like, hey, this isn't an LDS church.
Too.
The sign's down.
Oh, wow.
And then across the street was sober living / continuing living, where you could tell there were movers. I can't remember the name of it. I'll give them a shout out if I remember the name.
Yeah.
But it was downtown Salt Lake, and they bought this old church. And then these guys were walking back, and I was like, hey, we're parking here. We thought this was a church building. Are we fine parking here? And they're like, oh, fine. We're like, what is this? And they told us they're from that recovery place.
Yeah.
And I was kind of being a funny guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, have you guys heard of the Next Step podcast? To be funny to my wife and kids, And the guy's like, yeah, we listen to it all the time. And I was
serious?
like, yeah.
Wow.
And then they're like, oh, and they're like, he's the guy on it. My daughter said that. And they were like, shake my hand, like, oh, yeah.
No way.
So I felt every time I get on and check our emails, our comments, I feel a little guilty that we don't do this.
Yeah. See, I don't see those emails.
I know. But why did let's rewind for those that
So when did we do the last one?
I looked it up. It was about 8 years, almost 8 years ago.
Well, that was the first one.
Oh.
And then, but when did we do the last one? That was December-ish.
About 6 months ago.
Yeah.
No,
it was a year.
It was a year and 6 months.
Yeah,
It was a year ago. Year and a half.
Yeah, because I had long hair. I grew
you
that
did.
sucker out.
So, do you remember why we started in the first place?
Well, I remember you saying, "Hey, I got an idea to help people," and at the time, I was just telling someone this the other day. The reason why we did it, there just wasn't resources at that time. When you go back almost a decade ago,
There weren't a lot of podcasts.
yeah, there was the big ones or whatever, but there wasn't like today where every little person has a podcast, which is sick. And at the time, there wasn't any that you searched up that had there wasn't any recovery podcasts for sure, at least that we found. And then there wasn't any there was 2 or 3 pro LDS ones, at that.
Most of the LDS focused ones were they pretended to be pro LDS, but they weren't.
Yeah, at that time specifically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then now there's a bunch. We've been on a couple. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was I remember you asked me specifically, would this have helped if something like this was out in your first year? Would it have helped you? I'm like, of course. That first year was so internal, and meaning you're just you're so focused on rebuilding your life that you kind of really go deep internally, and you kind of live internally, and that's actually hard to get out of. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is I just really focused on what I was putting in all the time. So it was only music that was uplifting, only shows, movies. It was so intense because the brain is so fragile, especially when you're using that hard for that many years. I just remember being kind of just in my own little world and pretty isolated. But I think at that time it was necessary because I'd been living out here, projections of myself and not really being authentic inside.
Well, I remember
that makes sense.
Both you and I enjoy podcasts. Mm-hmm. This is 8 years ago. We were hunting when I
in
dropped
Yuma,
this
Arizona. Yep.
And
103 degrees at night.
It was hot.
105 that year. Yeah.
But I remember sitting, I'm the poser. I feel like a poser in recovery meetings.
Yeah. What did you say, Normie?
Sitting on the sidelines. I have an analogy with that I might drop, but I would hear the sharing, especially your shares and others, and I'm like, why other people need to hear this.
Totally.
Other people need to hear this.
Yeah.
And
And it sucks. It's just like in this little room.
Yeah.
Which is great, but it's like,
it wouldn't work if you're public. Like, it's so intimate and personal. But if we could capture that, if we could capture that and share it with others, wow, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and I remember even one of the things was like, hey, will you record your shares? And for sure in the AA community, like that's probably a big no-no. But they do, but not really, because they pay, like people get paid. I don't know everything about AA's culture, but I know that people do travel and just speak. And I know like
speaker meetings.
Yeah, speaker meetings. Like, and of course I haven't done that. I've done one. I was volunteered outside the church, but like I could do this every day for the 365, like, you know.
So we started, it was great. We wanted to be focus on recovery, focus on the solution of the problem, share some positive church news to counter the other. There's plenty of people out there doing a great job of defense of church in general, not just our faith, all faiths, because there's an attack on belief out there, religion.
100%.
And then we stopped around 3 years ago.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. Early, we were just busy. This is hard. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
You should have seen it's been 2 hours just to get this set up right now. And it was already set up. That's the crazy part.
I spent an hour and a half last night.
Yeah, so you're all in 4 hours to sit down and start talking right now.
Yeah.
And it's not your full-time job. And I'm no help.
You made sure we look good.
Yeah.
As good as we could.
I don't know.
But we slowed down 3 years ago, and I wanted to get into that. Why? And I was, both of us, our schedules were partly responsible. Partly was me not doing this because I felt like our messaging wouldn't have been as authentic. We had COVID hitting. Like, it was a weird time for everyone.
We talked about that in the last one a little bit.
And that's when we restarted back up.
Then we only did you did 2 with Lexi and then one with me.
I did 1 or 2 with you and a couple with Lexi. And the
Lexi ones were powerful. It was hard to hear. It was hard to hear for me. But everyone I would share it with was like, that was really special.
Yeah. So this is step 1, being honest. So me being honest when I felt that you weren't like,
you won't offend me,
all in on COVID rocked everybody.
Yeah.
And our meetings in general they just weren't as effective. And I felt you were slipping away from recovery as strong as you had been.
Yeah.
But then when we started back up, I'm like, I think we're good. And I was kind of using that as a carrot to like, hey, maybe if we get back podcasting, Jay will get back in step work, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like it was going there. Then I'm like, cool, let's get Lexi's story on there. And then when Lexi dropped it, I was like, ooh, maybe there's some
when I heard that.
Maybe there's some work that needs to get done.
Yeah. Well, I think that at that timing, little did you know that like not only me personally was not in the best place, but like Lexi was just coming into a place where she felt like she was just starting to deal with some pent up stuff that she had held, like resentments towards me. And so that's what came out on that podcast, right? It was like,
she wasn't specific.
She wasn't specific at all, but there was like stuff that had happened in 2020 that she said she was fine with. And we both thought we were like okay with. Like, that's the thing is like, I mean, you know this, you're older than me. Like when you live, like hindsight's always, it's like, 2020, right? That's why they say that. And so when you but in the moment you think you're fine, and sometimes you are fine, right? Hindsight comes back, like I was actually better than I thought I was even. I can't believe I was stressed. Or sometimes you look back and go, oh man, the last 3 years, not only was I not fine, I didn't realize like how sick I was or how stressed I was or how, emotions take place. So I think around that time that you hit me up to do this again over a year ago, thought we were good. We're just trying to come into a better place. But like Lex, obviously we don't have to talk too much about her, but like where she is today is a whole nother world. And then what that led for me is also.
Yeah. My point of that is I was like, we need to be on a break for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And that's why we didn't go back all in at that point. Cause we bought video gear and we got stuff set up to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think we need a little more time.
Yeah.
And then what chip did you pick up this year?
11, 12. Yeah, this would be 13.
We're sitting right over here.
Yeah.
And that was I hadn't been to a meeting in a long time. And that was from my outside looking in, around that time period was a fresh start for Jay. Mm-hmm. And you shared pretty openly at that point. The meeting was that a new meeting?
Yeah. Yeah. No. It was the Tuesday night meeting.
It was Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah. And you came and sat in the back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I felt that was a beginning of a really powerful restart. refresh, renewed commitment. I mean, I think I don't put words in your mouth again, but you were like recommitting to doing steps, sponsoring people.
Yeah. The truth is, when I took that step, it was like, or when I took that chip, which is like, you're kind of always living the steps. You're going on different steps depending on where you're at in life. You can correlate like, I wasn't living in that step at that moment. That one was, I had probably weeks prior to that, or a few months prior to that, or I don't know how long prior to that, I just started to feel like life is really difficult, and it felt like I couldn't do it anymore without God. Like I don't know how I got in. I mean, I know I can look back and say this is where it happened, but regardless of exactly what happened, I'd wound up in a place where I didn't feel like I had any relationship with God, and I definitely didn't feel like I was relying on him. I wasn't even going to him for help. So I was just like swimming upstream by myself and then trying to be successful at the same time. And
that wasn't like an all of a sudden.
No, it's a gradual thing. I think
this happened.
I had a buddy. Yeah. Like I can think back of the little things. I had talked to a buddy who was married for a long time, so like decades. And then I remember calling him, and he called me out of the blue and said, I'm getting a divorce, and it was really struggling. And I was like,
guy we see in the water sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And it was just like heavy. And then thinking about that and the things he said, what was going down, and he's in the program. And then it kind of like, wow, like that, I literally had just met them as a couple years, a year prior to that or so. And I thought everything was perfect. And so after decades, like you can lose your marriage. You can lose things that you think have this solid foundation can't end. Like, and it's a good that you do sometimes go about life not stressing on the foundation of everything. You know what I mean? So you're not super worried all the time. Mm-hmm. However, the reason why the 10th step is in the 12 steps is because it's there because you will, just like the reason why we take the sacrament.
What is the 10th step?
The 10th step is like a daily inventory. And so the reason why we take, I just baptized my daughter, right, a week ago, and she said it was the best experience ever. Can we do it again? I say, well, you get to do it every week when you take the bread and water. Now we say that a lot, but like we need that. Like Heavenly Father clearly had a design saying, you're going to get baptized this day, and within hours you're going to sin. It just is what it is. And that's why we're here. And same thing with like the steps, like you're going to come to a place where life's going to either throw curveballs at you. You're going to chase a curveball that you shouldn't be chasing at, right? It's either to you or from you or whatever. And you need that inventory to take a step. So when that person had told me he's getting divorced, I was like, whoa, kind of rocked me. I thought about me and Lexi's relationship. I'm like, are we really that solid? I'm like, I don't feel like we are. And then it was like several other things. I remember one of our friends in Sacrament, or his testimony about how he finally surrendered and was like done doing life without God. That was basically what he said. He was like, I finally want to go to God and just ask for help, and surrender. Basically, like I'm done doing this on my own. And it was like sitting there on my phone, not paying attention, like every Sunday. I'd fallen into this routine since COVID of not really being there, but not being there. And I heard that because it's a friend, so you're listening. I try to listen to my friends when they talk. And it was around that same time. So it was like, boom, it kind of hit me. And it wasn't like the Spirit. It's crazy because it definitely wasn't a spiritual hit, but it was like, it was the Spirit. But because like you can get to a place, I've been here many times, unfortunately, you can get to a place where you don't really feel the Spirit, but you definitely feel nudges, but you don't feel it like I feel it when I'm living right. Like when I'm living right and I have the companionship of the Holy Ghost, it's funny we teach that. And I always wondered if that was just word semantics, that we're kind of messing with. But it's true. Like when I feel the Spirit, I feel it. Like it radiates in my body. And I had no question about my decisions. When I am living I'm not keeping covenants and I'm sinning against myself or others or whatever. I'm not living the steps in the program. You can feel the Spirit hit you and then it goes away. And you're like, was that the Spirit? You know what I mean? You second guess it. Mm-hmm. And so between the friend, divorce, his testimony, sacrament testimony, and then just life. Like, I mean, last year in July, it was like, I remember, I had my 37th birthday. I had so much fun, like around that month. The year had been going great financially. Been on more vacations than I've ever been on. I'm not really a traveler. And I went to Mexico like 4 times, 2 different wave pools, Kelly's wave pool. It was like with my son. It was like so many fun things happening. And I was making the most money I've ever made, which is a good thing to talk about because it didn't equal happiness. And I remember even saying to Lexi because I just got back on Instagram within that year or so, like last year sometime. And I remember saying, I got so many, like, this is so cheesy, but like, you know, I have this defect that's super heavy and it's like hard to live with sometimes, you know? And, but I remember on my birthday, like feeling a lot of love from everyone. And I think because I was living so many years without the Spirit that for whatever reason, I was able to have that moment of clarity and feel really loved. And I remember saying that to Lexi, like I got so many more phone calls and text messages than I've ever gotten. And partly because my job is like, there's a lot of people I'm connected to now, where before I was really isolated and now I'm like, I have hundreds of people that I've met in the last few years. And it's crazy because that job is a lot of stress too. And it's like, it's not easy to keep recovery. It's not easy to do everything that's needed with that job. But then to have that moment on my birthday and see all these people I've touched, like these serious messages, because I've shared my recovery at work many times. And I even started a 12-step meeting in a church in San Diego that wasn't even my church, like no calling. And I was trying to do the right thing always. And what I'm getting at is, so then I have this July 31st, I have this feeling, it's great, gratitude, great day with Rusty, surfed all day, so much fun. And then within weeks in August, I'm at work one day and I have the sharp pain. Lo and behold, I have this infection that I don't know is in my intestines. I have to be rushed to the hospital, and I have, diverticulitis, which is a disease or whatever that can go away on its own, but it was my second or third time having it. And that never usually happens. If that happens, it's serious, and this was serious. And I found myself laying on a hospital floor waiting to be seen. And once they got me in there, for 6-7 hours in excruciating pain, once they got me in there, they're like, dude, this is serious. Like, it was like crazy. It was like, oh, he probably has pneumonia. It's not a big deal. To like, oh my gosh, hook him up to IVs. He needs this, give him morphine, all this stuff. And I was in excruciating pain. And what led to that is 6 weeks later, I had to have my colon ripped out, like my entire sigmoid colon.
Cut out, not ripped.
Yeah. It felt like it was ripped. It felt like someone went in there with a, And so from July 31st to now August 31st, I was in a world of hell, like pain. I went from like pure pleasure, happiness.
I have videos that he sent.
Yeah, like I was so lit. I didn't know what was happening. I felt, and I said my first night in the hospital, I think you and Brandon came to give me a blessing. I said out loud many times, because I was high on painkillers that they're injecting, I'm like, this is God punishing me for my sins multiple times. And Lexi's like, that's crazy, but that's how I felt. And the crazy thing is, Brad, like when I was on my mission at 21 years old, I've been a member for a couple years, and I woke up from my surgery, I said the same thing.
From the sinus surgery?
Sinus surgery, where I got hooked to opiates. So now that may seem crazy, but if you think about it, I'd only been a member for about a year and a half. And the difference is when I was on my mission, when it happened, I said, why is God punishing me? Because I was living so right. This time I was like, I know I'm not living right, and this is God. Then you come to, and you're like, I wake up in the hospital, because I went back and forth before they decided to cut everything out. So I was sick for 6 weeks, like on and off, in and out of the hospital. Like, he's going to die, he's not going to die. I have a little mini surgery with a drain plugged into me and all this stuff. My daughters are scared. I'm scared. I'm like, dude, this is how quickly your life could change. What if I have an autoimmune? What if I'm meeting people in the hospital that are just having the same thing.
And you probably Googled it to see what.
Yeah, but you don't even have to Google. When you're in the hospital, I've never spent that much time.
Yeah.
Have you ever, like,
as long as you know.
6 weeks on and off? That was insane. I'm fortunate. And you're just like, man, so I guess what I was saying, that wore off of like God's punishing me. And I remember people coming, friends in AA, saying like, God's trying to slow you down and tell you something. I'm like, what? I'm fine. What do you mean? I kind of went back to this, like, I'm fine. This is just life. And somewhere around, by the time it was over, which I got the surgery, so it was August. By the time I got the surgery, it was October. So it was like a couple months. I like felt, so now in December, which is when I took my chip, I was done. I was just like, I hate the way I feel. I don't feel good. I like love my family and I love my friends and life, but like I'm miserable. I'm not happy. I felt spiritually and mentally bankrupt again. Now this time I wasn't, I was weaning myself off the pills from the surgery, which, is obviously, even if you take them as prescribed, it's not good for anyone, let alone someone that has as many demons as I have that can come out. And so go back to how I felt. I'm taking that chip, and I remember Lexi's there. You're sitting in the back, and I'm glad my mom and
there was a room full of people who you would help.
Yeah,
become
there's
sober.
a whole room. Like if I'm like I can see it like it was yesterday. all these people and they're like saying all these good things. And I'm like, I feel like a piece of crap. I'm like, I just, I can already feel that way when I'm doing good, let alone when I'm not doing good. So that was hard. That was like and I just remember like putting my head down saying, I'm ready to surrender. I'd gone to lunch with Xander that day, which usually is a fun lunch. And it was like more of a real talk, like, hey, I'm doing these certain things that I know are not right. And I want to stop, but then again, I think I've gone too far. I think me and Lexi's relationship is we're not connected. And even though she was like, we're fine, I'm like, I don't think we're fine. She's not really into the church anymore. It's the first time in my whole entire 20 years of being a member that I'm actually questioning. And it was a dark moment. But luckily going to lunch with Xander, once again, my only saving grace in life sometimes is that I will take direction when I'm finally ready. And some people I've noticed don't even do that. And I went to lunch with Xander, and I'm so glad that he loved me enough to say what's up rather than, to say the real talk rather than beat around the bush. He's very blunt and was very intense. But it was also like, we've been here before. We know what to do. Call your bishop. I'm like, my bishop's my friend. And he's like, and then go do whatever he tells you, go get back on the horse. Like, just go to meetings, go to church, read your scriptures, like say your prayers. God will take care of the rest. And I kept wanting to future trip. But you don't understand how far we are now. No. He's like, well, cool. Either way, that may or may not happen. Where are you going to be though? Play the tape. Where are you going to be in 90 days with or without the church or gospel, And you have a better shot with it. I'm like, that's what it came down to. So I went to that meeting. So later that night.
That was that same day?
Same day. So later that night, I show up going, I took that direction. I left that lunch and called my bishop right away. Hey, we need to talk. I'm like, no, I can't wait for a meeting or whatever. Like, dude, we just need to talk. I'm like, here's where I'm at. I'm sick. I'm broken. I need help. And my sponsor's not, we don't have that same connection anymore. I don't really know of anyone else that has more time than me in the church. That and I'm like, and I don't feel like I knew the drugs were like out of my life. Like I was like done with them. So it wasn't more of that. It's more of like sexual stuff or, and then even just accountability for reading the Book of Mormon and going to church and like all this stuff. Like when you get in drugs, like drugs enter my system, I don't have a chance. When I take myself out of the pocket of the gospel and the 12 steps, I still don't have a chance. And so that's where I felt like I was. And, it was amazing though to feel that low and then to watch God show up in my life again, but it didn't happen overnight. It was definitely a rough few months from there.
Powerful.
But anyways, that's where I was.
Oh,
yeah. It's heavy. It's heavy to talk about.
that was hard to see as your friend on the outside. And we both surf, so we understand this, but when you're talking to someone who doesn't know how to surf, but they like watch some surfing on TV and they're trying to talk to you about riding the curl and you get some 2B time. Yeah. Like you're like, all right, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. Right. And recovery is the same way. Yeah. So Xander been through it with you. Like,
yeah. And Xander's in a really good place in life.
So you were able to receive that straight talk from him very well.
Yeah. And there was times in our life where we couldn't do that, but I knew we were where we ended up over the last 3 years. If this is 3 years from 2020 to where I was, where he was, we're in totally different worlds where we used to be very similar and one may be off 1 year or whatever, but like we were now like completely different. He's just like in the pocket and he has peace. And one thing he said, and our relationship has not been the same in years. And he's like, I love you as a friend, but we always had our thing was the gospel. Our thing was like recovery. And when I felt like that was the same thing you said, he's like, I had to distance myself a little bit, but I still pray for you daily and like all this stuff. And he's like, I don't do anything that takes away my peace. He kept saying that because I didn't feel peace. And, part of it was I was feeling a lot of emotion because of the drugs that was coming out, but still it was like a lot of the mistakes I'd been making.
Would you have accepted the same words he said from someone who was in recovery as well?
No, I think one thing, that for sure, probably not. I guess.
And why I asked that question is for those listening to this that may have a loved one.
Yeah, trying to help them,
right? So like I probably would have said the same things to you Xander would have said, but I think you accepted them from Xander.
Well, the biggest, that's actually a good question. For most people, for sure, it's got to be someone in the program. I think I would have taken it from you too. The difference is like it all comes down to the person willing to take, like I asked for the direction. It wasn't like, hey, let's go to, well, it was like, hey, let's do lunch. But real quickly it like came out. And then I was like, all right, I need help.
But you were comfortable bringing it up with him, knowing
Yeah, totally.
he knows, you knew what he was going to say probably.
Yeah, for sure. And so.
Was there anything surprising?
Nope. The same stuff I've said to other people.
Those are the same words you have said.
Yeah, there's no shame, there's no guilt, except for I did feel a lot of shame. Like it was when you come awake from a 3-year slumber, like it's a long time. And like 3 years of I still, it's crazy. We're interesting. Like humans it's wild because you can still do good things in 3 years. Like, right. Like I consider we could probably find several things I've done good for people or whatever, but I'm like,
yeah,
I can't remember any of the happiness. Like if I'm sitting here looking back on 3 years, this is what's sad. 3 years have gone by and I don't remember a lot of positivity. I just think about how,
which from the world standards though, you made a ton
more
of
money than I've ever made.
You bought a new surfboard every Friday.
Yeah. It's just to try it and then lose $200 to sell it if I don't like it.
Amazing trips. Like it.
Yeah.
I would say from the Instagram reel looked like this is all time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Yep. From the world's eyes, it was like
from the world's definition of happiness and success. You were checking all the boxes.
Yeah.
You should have been happy.
Yep. It's wild. Just taking out the once again, everyone can try to do life however they want to do it. But when I take out the gospel and when I take out the 12 steps, I don't have a chance. And I end up miserable every time.
So let's wrap up with a couple things of what you shared. Great. What was said that was help from Xander. So someone in the program helping you at the right time. You were willing to listen.
Yeah. So one, they got to be ready, obviously. If someone's not ready.
And I get asked as the normie, like, hey, how do I help my brother, cousin? And I do the same thing. And really it's leading them. My answer, lead them to a meeting, lead them to some other people in recovery.
Yeah.
Because they have this, lack of better word, a street cred.
Yeah.
And where you'll listen to them and not discount that you don't know where I'm from, what I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew you couldn't pull one over on Xander.
Yeah, I didn't have anything left anyways to pull over. Like, it was pretty obvious I was in a bad place. Like getting out of that surgery, now we're in December, like I didn't look good. I didn't feel good. Like it was like radiating. It went from like, oh, you could fake it to like.
You couldn't even fake it anymore?
I mean, yeah. I mean, health-wise, I was also miserable. Like, right, I like had my guts cut out. So it was rough, dude. It was a rough moment. And it's still... it's almost like being in my first year again, in a sense of like spirituality. It's like I've had first couple months were pretty rough, like just because you start reading. One of my commitments with the bishop was read the Book of Mormon every day, say prayers every day. I did those two things and a lot changed. And then, but nothing, nothing changes in the first couple months, right? You still feel like it's not a quick fix like the world offers, right? Like Satan has the lures like you used to talk about. And they're quick fix. Take this, feel this, right? All the drugs in the world right now are becoming legal. Mm-hmm. Take this, go to therapy, you'll be healed, right? You'll be able to hit new realms. And they change your dopamine levels, all that stuff. But then you show up the next day. Like I had a friend just do it and he feels the same now a week later. So he feels, because you're human and you're going to feel normal. And it took a couple months to see some serious miracles, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But then even now, like it's up and down. Like some days are good and some days are bad just because it's still...
Because it's life.
Because life, well, in a sense, like I don't mean like life showing up as bad, because that's always going to happen, right? That's the guarantee. It like challenges, but it's just like it's hard still sometimes to like balance the stress of everything and stay committed.
So there was something you brought up years ago, maybe 6 years ago, the No Matter What Club.
Yeah.
Tell us what the No Matter What Club is. Then we'll end this and we'll hit on the next episode.
So no matter what, you just don't pick up. So like. No matter how you feel, like what we used to say is, well, a guy said it to us, me and Xander, be part of the No Matter What Club. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, no matter what. Like, so this happens, rather than picking up and calling your deal, you pick up and call someone in the program, like no matter what. This happens in your life, you show up to a meeting no matter what, and he would just rattle off all the things that he'd been through in his life. And he's like, this is the No Matter What Club. And that's what I want to be a part of. And I'm like, wow, it was intense. And like, I think back to the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my recovery. That was the No Matter What Club. And it was like, it was just pure. Like I can think back to those first 7 years, even though there was course challenges and there was mess ups or whatever. Me and Lexi's like having kids and just learning how to grow up like now and coming into 30s and that phase. It was still, I think back on that phase of more bliss than pain. Where if I think back on the last 3 years, I think more pain than bliss.
So the No Matter What Club.
No Matter What Club leads the blessings for sure, and peace.
So we'll wrap it up there. So we'll talk about some of the short-term blessings from the No Matter What Club to you.
Cool.
And then we'll jump into step 2.
All right, I like it.
We're back.
Let's go.